everybody, welcome and thank you so much for checking out my channel. My name is Tanny and I am an independent author and somebody who just loves great stories. So on this channel I talk about writing, books I've enjoyed, and lessons I've learned on my publishing journey. Today I want to share with you guys the results of an experiment I recently did to get ARC copies of Tethered Spirits out and then to get early reviews of the book before its release. It was really fun and really interesting to kind of just compile all those results and see what worked and what didn't, and so I'm super excited to share that information with you guys and I hope it will be helpful. Before we dive into that experiment, I want to talk about what I've done in the past that maybe didn't work so well and why I decided that I needed to really try something new and different and figure out what was really going to work. With my first couple of books, I really didn't do any kind of ARC process or try to put the book out for early readers and get reviews for it before it released. And I honestly just didn't know that that was a thing that people did or that it was valuable at all. With my third book, I did try to get ARC reviews, but that was the third book in a series, and so it was really hard to get anybody interested in reading it at that point. But with my fourth book, that was Calico Thunder Rides Again, right there, I did have an opportunity and was starting to think more about ARCs and like getting the book out early enough for people to read and review it before it even released. The way that I decided would be best to go about it would be to reach out to a bunch of book bloggers and like people who review books online and just see if they would be interested in it. So I went through and used some website, I don't remember, but they have a ton of book bloggers listed on there and you can go to all their websites and like see who's open for review requests and what their requirements are. And so from there, I just started compiling this massive list of people who were open for review requests, who read fantasy and I thought might be interested in Calico Thunder Rides Again. Unfortunately, that strategy did not work very well for me. I ran into a bunch of issues. First of all, it's just really hard to find people who are interested and who are even open for review requests. And then of those, a lot of people just still refuse to read indie books, which, you know, I have my thoughts about that. The biggest issue was just that it was super time consuming and very tedious. Often the different book review blogs will have very specific things that they want you to include when you're sending them a request. And so even though you can kind of draft like a form email to just copy and paste to all of them, you do have to go through sometimes and tweak individual parts to meet that specific book blogger's preferences. And then unfortunately, I just had a really poor response rate. So just to give you an idea of how that went, with Calico Thunder Rides Again, I sent out 170 requests to different book bloggers, and those were only book bloggers who were open for requests because I did check that as I was sending those requests out. You want to know how many of them actually responded to me and said that yes, they wanted to read the book? 7 people out of 170. And then of those, only 2 people I could verify actually left a review. So that's like really discouraging, obviously. I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy on compiling that list and sending out requests and trying to do everything right. And it just, like, it did not pan out. It was not worth the time and energy that I invested. And so obviously I did not want to repeat that process with Tethered Spirits. And since Tethered Spirits is a new series launch for me, I figured this was as good a time as any to really do this experiment and try all the things and figure out what would work best. And then of course, I just want to share that information with you guys to, you know, just help you make a more informed decision maybe about what things might work well for you, or just get you thinking about different strategies for getting your own early reviews before your book releases. So I started my push for ARC readers on like October 6th and 7th. That was about 2 months away from the book's release. The book released on December 14th, so a little more than 2 months prior to the book's release. As of filming this, I'm about 6 weeks post-release, so the numbers that I'm sharing are, you know, reflective of that. Before I get into some more in-depth stuff about specific platforms that I used, I do want to just kind of mention a couple of miscellaneous things that I did that had varying degrees of successes, but that I didn't really track very well, and they were kind of just, I don't know, there was like nothing substantial to them. I posted in some Facebook and Goodreads groups. The Facebook groups ended up being more successful for me than the Goodreads groups. I got like no responses and no interest at all from Goodreads groups. But from Facebook groups, I did have a few people request to read the book. And then since I still had that list of book bloggers from Calico Thunder Rides Again, I did reach out to the 2 people who had followed through and left a review of Calico Thunder and asked them if they would be interested in reading and reviewing Tethered Spirits as well. And finally, when I had done my cover reveal a few weeks prior, I did follow up with the people who signed up to help with my cover reveal and asked if any of them would be interested in receiving a arc of the book. I feel like that's a pretty good way to maybe get some potential arc reviewers. They're already signed up to help with your cover reveal. They're already, at least somewhat interested in the book, hopefully. So, might as well just ask and see what happens. All right, that was a really long intro, but finally, on to the more in-depth stuff. There are 3 different services that I want to talk about, and then one kind of strategy that I put together myself and that ended up being really successful for me, so I want to talk about that as well. The first service I want to talk about is Booksprout. Booksprout is free. They do have some paid options, but I was just using the free version. And Booksprout is a service that connects authors to readers, and then you can upload your ARC file and they will distribute that to readers who are interested. It's nice because you can go in and modify a few of the settings to specify where you want reviews posted, and they also allow you to send out reminders when your release date approaches so that you can remind your readers to leave those reviews. In total, I got 2 requests from Booksprout, and neither of those people ended up actually reviewing the book. I will mention that I have had slightly better luck with them for older books that I've published, but unfortunately that's just not what happened this time. As far as my overall experience with Booksprout, I honestly was not super impressed with the service this time around. I just had so few review requests and nobody actually ended up following through, even though I did send the reminder. Will I use them again in the future? Sure, why not? At this point, with the free option being kind of, so lackluster for me, I'm not really willing to pay money to use the paid options. But, it's free. It's pretty easy to upload your files if you already have them. So, might as well do it again in the future. But with low expectations, I guess. The second service that I used was BookSirens. So like Booksprout, BookSirens is a service that connects authors to readers and then distributes ARC copies of your book to those readers who are interested. They have like a 3-month window where they will promote your book to readers. You pay a $10 flat fee to upload your book file, and then you are charged $2 each for every reader that ends up downloading your book. There is an option to cap the maximum number of readers that you want to be able to download so that you don't go over a certain amount. So I ended up capping mine at 25 readers, which would have meant that maximum I would have been spending $60, but I actually only ended up spending $38. BookSirens claims to have an overall review rate of 75%. My rates were slightly less than that, but it was close enough that I feel like, their claim of 75% is pretty close, and that's a reasonable claim for them to make. In total, I had 14 requests or downloads through BookSirens. 9 of those people left a review on Goodreads, and the average rating that they gave the book on Goodreads was 4.2 stars. And then 3 of them ended up cross-posting their review to Amazon, which was really nice. My overall experience with BookSirens, I was really happy with this service. I think it worked really well. I feel like I got some good reviews out of it, and the pricing seems fair to me. Obviously, I did wish that more of those reviewers had posted their review to an actual retailer site. I did kind of wonder if I had listed the book closer to release date, if more of those reviews would have been posted to Amazon instead of just Goodreads. So next time I might try to list my book on BookSirens 2 to 4 weeks before release date instead of, 2 months. I feel like that was a big window of time, and I could see that people were finishing the book pretty early. And then, by the time release day hit, it just wasn't on their radar anymore probably, and probably not going to post a review to Amazon at that point. But overall, I was really happy with BookSirens. It's a service that I'll probably consider using again in the future. The next service that I tried was a NetGalley co-op through Victory Editing. I think in the book world, we are all pretty familiar with NetGalley. It's a huge reviewing platform that connects authors and readers. And it's especially big in like the traditional publishing space. But unfortunately, because they are so big and well known and work primarily with traditional publishers, the pricing is just not accessible to most indie authors. A 6-month listing for one book costs $500 at NetGalley. So if you're an indie author and you're just gonna pay for a listing for a book, like $500 is a lot of money. I don't know about you, but that is way beyond my budget, and that price point just completely eliminates most indie authors from even being able to consider NetGalley as an option. Fortunately, I did discover this kind of workaround that was really interesting, and I thought I'd give it a try, and that is to use a co-op. So a co-op is just where a bunch of authors get together and list their books under the same account on NetGalley. And so then they just pay the fee, like the annual fee or whatever it is, to list as many books as they want. And that ends up being a lot cheaper because each author will then just pay like for their slot. The co-op that I chose to use was through Victory Editing, and it was $45 for a 1-month slot. And so I just chose to do the 1 month, and I did that in November actually. Victory Editing ended up managing like the setup for me and uploading my files and making sure that everything was uploaded correctly, and there were no issues with that, which I really appreciated. And then all I had to do was log into the account and approve or deny the requests as they were coming in. In total, I had 76 review requests through NetGalley. Of those, I approved 43 and declined 33. So I was a little picky with that, and I'll explain why. I really wanted to make sure that, first of all, that I was getting reviewers who would actually follow through and read the book. So I would look at the person's review rate to see if they were actually reviewing the books that they were requesting. I did have a ton of requests where people just like had requested 1,000, 2,000 books and had like 0 reviews, or maybe only 1 or 2. And like those were requests that honestly I just flat out denied because I just didn't see the point in approving a request from somebody who's probably not going to read the book anyway. Sometimes they would also have their Goodreads profile listed, or a blog or something like that. And so I could go over there and see what kinds of books they were reviewing, and, were they reviewing those books well? And by well, I mean, 3 stars or higher. I wanted to make sure that they were actually reading fantasy and, especially young adult fantasy, and that they were enjoying those books more or less. I just didn't want to give the book to people who like hate fantasy, don't read fantasy, their entire profile is like all nonfiction or something like that that's completely unrelated. Those people are not going to enjoy Tethered Spirits anyways, so like the book is not for them. So yes, I was a little picky about my review requests and like who I accepted and denied. I feel okay about that. I did see a bunch of people on there were like just accepting every request that came in. I wanted to be a little more selective, and so that was kind of the process that I used. In total, the book currently has 7 reviews on NetGalley with an average rating of 3.9 stars. I was able to find 4 of those reviews have been posted on Goodreads, and 1 has also been posted to Amazon, so I do appreciate the cross-posting of reviews with that. As far as my overall experience, I was really pleased with the Victory Editing co-op itself. They made everything very easy. They had very clear rules outlined and like policies for enforcing those rules to ensure that everybody who had access to the account was using it respectfully and not messing with anybody else's book. They were really great to answer my questions and concerns and kind of walk me through the process, since I had never done this before and was not familiar with NetGalley at all. As far as NetGalley itself, though, as a service, I was a little let down by that, honestly. I think I went into it with really high hopes and big expectations. I mean, NetGalley is like, I don't know, like the pinnacle of book review websites, right? And places to get reviews. It's huge. And so I think I just expected a lot out of it. And like the rating is lower there than it is anywhere else. And I kind of expected that. I think reviewers on NetGalley tend to be a little harsher. My friend that had used this service before commented that as well, that she feels like they are a little harsher. which is fine. Like, I expected that, so that I'm not upset at the rating that the book has on NetGalley. It's more just the follow through in terms of like the requests that I actually approved, and then people that actually followed through and read the book. This is a service that I would consider using again, but it's not one that I'm going to automatically jump on and say, oh yes, absolutely, I really love this and I'd use it again. For me, it just wasn't quite that. So it's something that I would have to think about in the future. All right, now let's talk about the method that ended up working best for me, surprisingly. And it was completely free, and I was able to put it together all myself. And that was just to use my own sign-up form. So this was something that was suggested to me by another author friend of mine, Kat Rector. So shout out to Kat for suggesting this. Thank you for the idea. So I created a Google form that just very simply asked for, name, contact information, and then a couple of other things that I wanted to kind of help screen potential readers and see who would be a good fit. And then I used my newsletter and social media to just, post about this form that I had and direct people to it if they were interested in receiving an ARC. On that form, I did ask other questions like I mentioned, and I did have kind of specific criteria for accepting review requests. So first of all, I did ask people to link at least one social media platform where they post about books or book reviews. It could have been their Goodreads profile, their blog, their Instagram, like anything. It doesn't matter, just something. Most people had at least a couple hundred followers, but I didn't have a limit on that, or you have to have at least this many. I didn't have any kind of requirements about that. It was just, pretty much if they had any kind of platform or evidence that they do review books at all, that's all I was looking for. I also left an open-ended response question where I just asked, why are you interested in reading Tethered Spirits? And really all I was looking for with that was just some kind of interest in, something they had seen about the book that made them want to read it, or that they enjoy YA fantasy, or that they frequently read fantasy books. And then finally, they had to be okay with ebook format. I did put a stipulation there where if they had more than 10,000 followers on social media and were planning to post about the book on social media, then I would be willing to consider sending them a hard copy. I only ended up having one person who met that criteria, and I did send her a hard copy, and that was fine. I was more than happy to do that. But just in terms of the costs of physical ARCs, I can't offer those to everybody, unfortunately, so I did have kind of some criteria with that. So in total, I had 31 requests, and I approved 26 of those. So that means I denied 5, and that was due mostly just to a lack of appropriate response on some of those questions on the form, or people who were looking only for physical ARCs. 10 of those people ended up posting reviews on Goodreads, and the average rating on Goodreads from those 10 reviews was 4.6 stars. 5 of those reviews were cross-posted to Amazon, and the average rating of those 5 was 4.8 stars. A couple of days after the book's release, I just sent out an email to everybody who I knew I had sent an ARC to and let them know that, the book is now out. Thank you so much for being a part of my ARC team. Please consider posting a review on Amazon if you are able to, or if you would like to. That would be really helpful. And so I do think that that was helpful in getting people to cross-post to Amazon. Another question I asked in that email was if they would be interested in reading the second book in the series. So that was really nice because I'm already able to start building an ARC team for book 2, which hasn't even come out yet. But now that I have a list of those people who are interested, when it's ready, I can email them and just, offer it again. My overall experience with this process was that it worked really well for me, better than I even expected. I know 10 reviews doesn't sound like a lot, but that's more than a third of the people that I actually sent the book to. So I'm pretty happy with that follow-through rate. And the reviews that I did get this way were really overwhelmingly positive. And so that was really encouraging to see. There's a couple of different reasons that I think that was the case that I want to talk about. First of all, I was specifically asking my existing audience and people kind of in my circle of like followers and people who are already kind of interested in my stories. Those people are probably already a little more inclined to like pick up the book and then hopefully to like it if they've enjoyed some of my previous stuff or are just more familiar with me as an author. And then secondly, with the questions that I asked on the forum and with the posts that I made on social media, I was able to be very specific about the information I was providing about the book. And so then I was able to very specifically target readers who would be interested in young adult fantasy with multiple points of view, with an interesting magic system that is very focused on characters and character relationships. All of those things are kind of the heart of what makes Tethered Spirits the book it is. And so people who were interested in that and signed up for an arc because of that were more likely to, appreciate the book for what it is and, maybe more inclined to leave a higher rating as a result. I'm also super excited about the fact that I was able to get readers who are potentially interested in reading book 2 in a series. It is a lot harder to get reviews for, future books in a series than it is with that first one, because people, have had to read the first book or the first 2 or 3 books in order to review that next one. This is definitely something that I will be using again, probably for all of my future book releases. It was pretty easy to set up and pretty straightforward, and I was very happy with the results. So there you have it. Those are the results of my big arc experiment. I do want to note that this was like a very unscientific process, obviously, and there's not even enough data to really draw solid conclusions from, but I hope it's good, like anecdotal evidence at least of things that I tried that worked well for me, things that maybe didn't work so well, what my experiences were like. You can take all of that into consideration as you're making your own decisions about your arc process and you're getting your book ready for release. If you've used any of these or if you've considered any of them, I would love for you to leave a comment and let me know kind of what appealed to you about them or what your experiences were. That would be really interesting to see, other people's results and things like that. While you're at it, if you could hit that like button, that would be awesome. That really helps my channel and I appreciate it. Please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I will see you guys next time. I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.